Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Well, hello. This is my fourth session on the Festival of Storytellers. My name is Thomas Fargnoli. I have a few stories to tell. I thought today that in addition to telling my stories, that I would also kind of focus on aspects of writing that I encountered during the three books that I've had published. And hopefully that you can learn from them and also get some insight into some of the thoughts that went into producing a book. I have two books that are, as I mentioned, published, and a third book that is currently in the process and probably will be available around March. All three of my books, as well as my story, as well as some magic tricks that I do from time to time, are all on my website, okay? thomasfargnoli.com. You can learn more about me, learn about my books, and as I mentioned, there will be a site, there'll be one page where I do some magic tricks. And the reason I do the magic tricks is because that's just one of my professions over the years. I was a engineer for over 40 years, software and systems. I was a adjunct professor for 11 years, actually, and mostly teaching computer science types of courses, languages and such. I was a magician. I still do magic from time to time. My daughter and I did magic together when she was younger. We would do a lot of shows. I had live doves, and at one point, Janine, my daughter, actually would do an escape that Houdini himself did, and she actually won a trip to Las Vegas doing that escape out of a bag, and also. I was a deacon for 10 years of my life, which included 5.5 years of study and a good 5 to 6 years as an actual deacon in the Catholic Church. Now, a deacon in the Catholic Church is like a priest, except that, they can be married. They can be married one time only. And they can't perform certain things that a priest can do, like confessions and things like that, of that nature. But they have their own ministry. In my case, it was working in the hospitals. Just talking to people in the hospital, helping them, letting them know that people were thinking of them. Sometimes I would do my magic too in the hospital. So that's kind of my background. A lot of things went on in my life. I had a great life. I had a great childhood. How did I ever get into writing? Well, as great as a life as I had, um, everything went wrong in 1 year. All three 40s came to an end. My wife, of being married over 40 years, just 40 years actually, came to an end. She died tragically. She died from suicide. Um, and no one really seen that coming, despite her having two brothers that committed suicide the same way. It was totally a tragedy and a shock. It took me a long time to grieve and to get over that. Grieving a loss of a loved one, particularly for 40 years, is hard. But suicide makes it a little harder, makes it a little more complex, as I learned, being a suicide survivor. A suicide survivor is someone who lost someone to suicide. The other thing that happened is that right after that, soon after that, I had to make a decision because, the Catholic Church made it very clear. I cannot stay a deacon and pursue another relationship if I wanted to. Not that I had someone to pursue a relationship right away, but I did, it did make the whole grieving process complex because I didn't know what I wanted to do, but to be told you couldn't was a little tough. So I had a hard time making that decision. It took me 2 years actually to make that decision. And during that 2 years, I had not a heart attack, but I had a heart problem. And as it turned out, I needed bypass. I needed quadruple bypass surgery where they actually take your heart out, bypass it, put it back in. And that was the first time I experienced true loneliness. My wife would have been there with me for sure, but she wasn't. And I had children, but, they had their own lives. And I realized then in recovering from that operation that I was the type of person that needed to share my experiences with, needed to share love with. And so out of all of those things, and then there was the rejection. When I made my decision, it was not received well by the church. And, so I felt rejection. A lot of priests and deacons that used to have lunch with me, and they just didn't understand the decision. So, I knew about the decision going in, but I didn't really know about it here. Okay, I always knew about it up here. And so when I made the decision, rejection was another thing that I had to go through. So all of those things, made me go seek a therapist to talk about things. And he suggested I write things down. And that became the first book, The Deacon, An Unexpected Life. It's a true story. It's my memoir in a sense. I did add a little bit of fiction to make it interesting, but everything in here is real. Even though this book is about my unexpected life, things that happened to me unexpectedly, I plan to retire and travel with my wife, be a deacon, but it didn't turn out that way. But my life is no different than yours, many other people who had unexpected things happen, and so I think that you'll get a lot out of this book because you also can apply it to those unexpected events in your life. I don't make any money on any of my books. The proceeds of this book go to suicide awareness. And it is my pleasure to bring out this story for you, to show you that, despite all of these unexpected events, there are glimpses of light that shine through. I would say that what I learned most about writing this book is to write with passion. And I would advise anyone, depending on your genre, of course, who's your book for? Who do you want to read your book? I think you have to ask yourself that even before you start writing any book. Is it just for someone's entertainment? Is it to help someone? In my case, I was truly trying to, through my own experiences, show other people that there are glimpses of hope and love in the world today. So I made sure that I made it passionate, starting out with the first chapter in the hospital, where I encounter a couple who lost their child in a fire, and the priest wasn't showing up, so I had to go. And here, can you imagine confronting a husband and wife who lost their child in a fire? And so I start out with that experience, and so I think it is passionate, and so that would be my goal for most writers, to write with passion. After that book was published, I was surprised that I had some great reviews, and suddenly I realized that maybe I can write. Not that I'm a New York Times or New York bestseller, but I did have a knack to write. And I think what helped me was that I didn't really change much. I was still the engineer type. I was still a deacon inside. I still had love for people. So I took all of that and I used it, even used my magic, used it in the creation of my books. The next book, I decided that I would, I asked myself, what do I like about being a deacon? What was it that attracted me? What was it that called me? A lot of people will say, were you called to be a deacon? Well, I would say that we are all called to do something. It could be very slight, but we all have this calling to do something. And I decided that what made me really enjoy being a deacon was my preaching, was talking to people like myself. That's where the deacons, I think, have an advantage as opposed to a priest who really can't relate to a 30 or 40-year relationship. So I was very effective that way. So I asked myself, how can I stay effective? And the answer came to me with that first book, is to put my feelings and my thoughts into a book that people can relate to. So the second book, Wisdom from the Wick, is a fiction book. It's a Christian fiction, and it takes place in a tavern, a neighborhood bar called the Warwick Tavern. And so the locals there called it the Wick. Now, what's interesting about the Wick is, just like any town tavern, you go there to enjoy company, friends, have a few drinks, just to relax. You don't go to a tavern to talk to someone about philosophy or religion or life in general. So, I took this another step further. I created an individual. This individual's name was John. And people were drawn to him. They were drawn to talk to him. They were drawn to discuss things that they normally didn't plan on discussing. There was something about John. He seemed to know what you needed to talk about. And he went out of his way to make it clear to you. So not only do I use words, but I use pictures. And what John is doing in the bars, he's asking the bartender for some pieces of paper, and he's drawing different things. In this particular case, he's showing the relationship between the mind, the body, and the soul. And he explains that to various individuals. As I said, it's not a subject for a bar, but it nonetheless, it's a subject that has to be heard. And unlike being in a church with a fancy robe, there's this John who's in a bar having a beer, talking to various individuals. Turns out that John turns out to be a very special person. I think you'll enjoy this. I think you'll enjoy the stories of each of the clientele that John speaks to. And again, the same common denominator here is hope and peace and finding a way in the world as an average person. Okay. The book did good. It's still relatively new, And so, it solidified the fact that this is what I want to do now. And so I'm retired all of those things, still do magic from time to time, but this is what I plan to do. So my third book now, which is probably not going to be out until March, is called Magnolia, okay? A View of Heaven. Now, this covers temporary because I'm still working on that. This book takes place, the setting of this book is in a small town called Magnolia. And Magnolia is a real town in South New Jersey. It's a small rural town. It's a great town. It's like a mile wide. So everyone knows everybody. When I was growing up there in the 60s, what amazing place it was to grow up. We could just jump on my bike, go to the corner candy store, and for 5 cents, you can get any candy bar you wanted. If you had 30 cents, you can get a hoagie, right? A submarine. If you had 60 cents, you can get an amazing milkshake. And so since I had a paper route, I always had money. And my father would say, always, save half. So I would go in there and I wonder if I have any teeth left today because of all the candy I used to eat. But what a great place to grow up. So this story is about a gentleman who's 92 years old. He's dying. He's in a hospital. And he's full of pain. He's racked with pain, coughing. And as he passes out, or I should say, falls asleep from the drug usage and everything else, he finds himself back in his hometown of Magnolia. This individual, which I named Lou, he finds himself back in his hometown of Magnolia, New Jersey. And not only does he find himself back there, he's not a child. He's an adult, but he's free of pain. He has no pain. He has no coughing spells. And on top of that, he has tremendous energy. What's going on? Dad, wake up. Well, he wakes up and he's back in the hospital. And again, he's with the pain and the chest pains and the coughing. And he flip-flops back and forth from these two states until finally he passes away. And he starts his journey to heaven in Magnolia, in that environment that he was so free when he was a child, before culture had its impact, before all the different forces that change us as we get older. And so what's heaven like? What's it going to be like? Do we all go back to our hometown? No. But the questions that come up when you talk to people about heaven are, will I see my family? Will I see my loved ones, my parents, my grandparents? God forbid my children, if they're there before me. Will I see them? How will I get around? Will there be food in heaven? Will there be food in heaven? How about sex? Will there be sex in heaven? So what I do in Magnolia, right, is this particular individual, Lou, starts to learn about heaven. He gets a little help. He has a guardian angel that takes him through all of the aspects of heaven and answers most of those questions that I just brought up. It's a book that provides hope. I'm not saying that I know what heaven's like, but no one could disprove my theory or my view of heaven either. So I think you'll enjoy it. I think there will be moments of peace and hope for you as well, because who knows what's ahead, right? Who knows what's ahead? And so I think all three books that I showcased here, right, are a one theme, okay? And the theme is hope. The theme is peace. And the theme is love. There was, Confucius, who lived many thousands of years ago, and he said it's better to save one life than to build a 7-story pagoda. I shared this the other day, and when you think about it, I think we're a little too preoccupied in building pagodas and not so much saving lives. We are all vulnerable. We all could use friends. We can all use someone to talk to. And I believe my books kind of use that as a theme of staying passionate. And I think regardless of what your passion is, I think that's a big part of your writing. So I think I'm pretty much covered what I wanted to talk about today. And I guess we'll just open it up for questions if there are any. It's 3:30, almost 3:30 in southern Miami, or I'm sorry, southern Florida. So I'll open it up for questions. It sounds like someone wants to know a little bit about the traveler who is he assessing a parallel world while he is unconscious? Well, no, that's just it. See, one of my views of heaven is no, there's not time travel. There's not time travel. Okay, there's only now. And so he starts to learn that. And it isn't an alternate universe at all. One of the theories or views I have of heaven that it's real and it's here now. And there's just a slight dimension difference. And so yeah, it's not an alternate universe at all. So I think you'll find it interesting in that regard. In fact, that question comes up. Lou asks the guardian angel, "How about time travel?" His guardian angel wants to travel somewhere. Where do you want to go? He says, "I don't care. How about Italy?" So they end up in Italy, but it's current day Italy. So again, there's a little twist there, but I think it's somewhat realistic. Okay. Great to be here. Good day. Well, great to be here. Thanks, Ethan. Any other questions at all coming down the road here? Hey, Mason. I hope that everyone has an opportunity to think about who their audience is and to write with passion. And I'd be interested to read some of those books as well. What else do I have to do now? I'm retired, right? Although I must say I'm more busier now than I've ever been. Any other questions? I'll wait for some more questions. If not, I guess we're pretty much done. And I should have brought some magic tricks. One of the things that you can do on my website, thomasfargnoli.com, is you'll see that the way the website's organized. You can look at my books, even the one that I'm writing now that's almost done. Or you can go to my magic page and see me do some tricks. I try to tell a little story with the magic to make it applicable. And you can also look at each, find out a little bit more about me. And certainly have an email, and you can certainly contact me if anything I can do to help you in your effort to be, to write. Again, I started out with saying the most important thing is to know who you're writing your book for. Okay. Here's a question. While I agree that everyone needs a companion, what advice can you give to those who are a little recluse and not accepting help? Yeah. Well, it is hard. I know a lot of people who, would choose to be alone. I would say that there's a big difference, right, between being alone and being lonely. And, being alone is something that is probably healthy from time to time. I've always enjoyed being alone, but I always knew that it was temporary. The loneliness, though, is kind of a state of mind that is very, difficult. I don't believe we were meant to be alone. I believe we were meant to have relationships, various types of relationships. And I think the first thing you have to realize is that it takes work. A relationship takes work. Yeah, they don't come right to you. As you get older, even they get harder. And but you have to take some chances. You have to take some chances and just start talking to people. What's the worst that can happen? And you just might meet a really good friend that way. Being honest is best relationship that you can ever create. was a question. Which part of the story is your favorite? In Magnolia? Well, I love the relate when Lou goes back and he's a child again and he's riding his Schwinn bike and he's so free. He's riding his bike. He feels so good. He's not coughing. He's stopping into the bakery. He's getting a brownie for 15 cents. And that surge of freedom is the best part of the book. And I wanted that to be the intro to heaven. Time travel was a concept rooted in theoretical physics, particularly within the framework of Einstein's theory of relativity. Yes, and that's much greater. That's much higher than my pay scale. But I do remember in college, I loved philosophy, and I read philosophical analysis, which was an amazing course. And he convinced me that John Hospers, the writer of that book, that it's almost impossible to even imagine going back into time. Can you believe it? You might say H.G. Wells imagined it. But no, you imagine being in a previous time. If you got into a time machine today wearing a green shirt and you go back to yesterday you had a blue shirt on. Well, do you have a blue shirt on or a green shirt on? So it's a contradiction. And so therefore it's hard to imagine, just like you can't imagine a square circle. But again, it's not me to be talking about that, but I am familiar with Einstein's theory. I don't understand it all, but I understand the two different alternate rates, so to speak. Who is John in your book, Wisdom from the Wick? And what draws people to him in the Warwick Tavern? First of all, people are drawn to him because somehow he can sense what they need to talk about. And John turns out to be someone very special. John has wisdom indeed, and he knows people from various time frames, okay? And John, let's just say this, that he leaves everyone with a knowledge of who he really is. And why do people come to the Wick? And how does John's presence change the atmosphere? Well, the atmosphere is always going to be the same in the tavern. In fact, as John's talking to different people are throwing hot peppers at each other. This is a crazy bar. It's actually, a lot of the events really happened there. In fact, the person who built the Warwick Tavern was in World War I. And so there were some interesting stories about that, and I kept that, and that's in the book as well as pictures of the person who built that bar. And even though John's there, he's talking to people in the midst of all of the other things that go on in a tavern. So it doesn't really change the atmosphere for everyone, but only for those who are open to listen to John, who are driven to listen to John, and walk out a different person. They could have always just come in there and had a beer or two with their friends, but now they realize something more. And so that's the whole gist behind John in the work. Okay. And I think, we have another one. Okay, nope, and that's the same one. Okay. Any other questions? What chapter did I enjoy writing? Well, I'll tell you, in the Deacon, it was the chapters that really occurred in the hospital. In the Wisdom from the Wick, it was in having someone in the tavern have a breakthrough with their lives and their relationships with their family. And in the Magnolia, again, I think I mentioned it was just that whole exhilarating experience of realizing that you are in heaven. Can you imagine? And the things that occur. Yeah, and there's another question on Einstein's theory of relativity. I God bless you on that. I'll tell you, that's an interesting field, but as I said, that's beyond my pay grade. That's a tough one. So many, I've enjoyed so many movies of going back into time, but I think I understand it with a little more understanding now. What inspired you to write a book, and what readers can take from your novels? This Deacon book was inspired me from everything I went through. It was that passion. It was a cathartic experience to write things down, and that's what I did. And it became a book because I think people will sense my passion, and that's what I was suggesting to everyone: is if you write with your passion, that people will sense that and will appreciate it. What value highlighted in the book do you think is the most important and applicable in modern times? The most important thing in modern times is to be open to messages, because they're all around us, but we're so busy, or we have our minds so full of things. We need to take time to be alone, to listen, and things will come to you, and ideas to write will come to you as well. Philosophy, I would say I've always enjoyed this, reading Blaise Pascal, who said that the heart has its own reasoning that the mind really doesn't understand. So anything to do with the heart, making decisions with the heart, it's just, to me, it resonates with me, and I read a lot of things about that. Leo Pascalia, another one that writes about love, and it's an incredible book. The Shack was a great story of a different view of, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Yeah. How do prayer, God's graces, hope, and faith play a role in the discussions? Yeah, they play a big part. John is always quoting scripture, but in a way that it's easily understood. It's not esoteric. It's very, very apropos to the situation that is going on. Okay, so we're almost out of time. I want to thank everybody for listening to me, and I think I have one more session tomorrow. Do you ever use your writing as a way to explore your own beliefs or views? Absolutely, I do. Sometimes you start a new chapter, you start to write, and things come to you that way. And, it probably wouldn't come to you if you didn't start writing about that chapter. So I think, yeah, it's a little bit of both. And I guess that's it for now. I think, yes, love is intricately a part of us. And I think my book about heaven really brings that out. Okay, I guess I'm past my time frame, so I just want to thank everybody for listening to me. Check my website out, thomasfargnoli.com. Okay, and send me an email. Let me know how you're progressing in your writing. Thank you.